Aftermath. Admiral Sloane took a bath. Okay, welcome back to our series, The Aftermath of Aftermath, where we get into Chuck Wendig's first book in the Aftermath trilogy. If you don't know what this is, please click on the thing and it'll direct you back to the beginning of the series, but basically we are going through this book chunk by chunk. But I've been really enjoying talking to you guys and getting into the nitty-gritty of this book. But with that, let's get started. There's a lot to talk about here. We start with chapter 18. We come back to the kind of Aftermath crew. I don't really know what to call them. They're kind of like this book's equivalent of the Ghost crew, but they don't really have a name as far as I can remember. They might get one in the next book, and I'm just forgetting it. But for now, we'll refer to them as the Aftermath crew. That's Nora, Timon, Singer, and Jazz. When we last left them, there was a bit of a cliffhanger. There was somebody pounding at the door and we didn't know who it was. As it turns out, it's Mr. Bones. So he's another member of the Aftermath crew and he's still kicking. So he's back. But really the important part of this chapter is we see Wedge, who's getting tortured again by Tashu. Tashu being the imperial person at this council who's like the kind of dark side devotee, if you will. It's really just kind of a back and forth between them, and it's really just, I think it's a way for us to remember that Wedge is in the story. Wedge hasn't been around for a whole lot in a while, so it was kind of good to check back with him, and it's basically about how Wedge is trying not to lose hope, even though he's been kidnapped and that sort of thing. Now, funnily enough, Tashu reminds me of a character from Star Wars Rebels. If you remember, Varys Hayden, I hope I'm saying that right, he was a character that showed up in the Wolves and a Door and A World Between Worlds episodes. He was the kind of Sith archaeologist dude that was questioning Sabine when Ezra disappeared into the place. And when I was watching the episodes, I actually wondered if he wasn't Tashu, but as it turns out, he's not. But I would assume they're kind of a similar-ish character. I don't actually know if they belong to, like, the same order or not. I don't know if any of us really know, but it's a similar kind of thing. And it kind of goes to show that Palpatine had a lot of advisors that were like dark side people. And we see some of this stuff with the Lightsiders on Jeddah with the Guardians of the Wills. You know, you see Chirrut and Baze, and the idea there is Jeddah is actually a holy city for other kind of Force religions. And I'd be kind of curious to know what the dark side equivalents of this would be. So it's kind of got me wondering about this larger world that they've kind of been dancing into with new canon. But that was a pretty short chapter, so then we're going to go on to Interlude 7, which is Coronet City on Corellia. So we're seeing Corellia, the home of Han Solo and whatnot. And here's where we meet a bounty hunter by the name of Mercurial Swift. I can never say his name. I know the word. The word is where we get the word Mercury from. Who's the Roman version of the Greek god Hermes, and it's also an element. Like, I totally know, I can't pronounce it. So Swift, we're gonna call him Swifty. Swifty the bounty hunter is in a fight with Dengar. And this I found fun. Just one, it's cool seeing Dengar back in canon after seeing him in the Clone Wars and obviously Empire Strikes Back. It's kind of cool because Dengar's trying to set up a bounty hunters guild, which is very much a thing that existed in old canon, and in fact I have up here, it's fine. I have, Bounty Hunter's Code Book, so this is one of the Dan Wallace guides that are still getting made, but now they're getting made in current canon. This one is very Legends-oriented, but kind of brought back memories of that. And so that's kind of the big thing there. Swifty starts to show up more later, and I'll just kind of tell you that now, though I won't say in what capacity, partly to avoid spoilers, partly because I don't remember, and I'm excited to find out. I just know that this isn't the last time we've seen him. I do really appreciate, though, he's in a fight with Dengar, and he wins, because he yells, "Look, Boba Fett!" And everyone turns, and it's not, Boba Fett's not there, but I think every person reading the book probably went, "Boba Fett? Boba Fett? Where?" And then he wasn't there. Chapter 19. So we start out with Ada, and this is the first time I think we've really seen anything from Ada's perspective. She's the attaché to Sloane. She's her kind of wing woman on all of these things. And Ada starts as just like that character, right? She just starts as the assistant, and she becomes a more important character as the books go on. And it's funny, I didn't remember reading a bit of the book from her perspective, but now knowing where the whole story goes, it's good to see, to kind of come back and witness that. But this is kind of an awkward chapter. So you get like 2 pages of Ada saying how much she loves working for Sloane and how much she respects Sloane and how much she's like looking forward to taking some news to Sloane. And then we cut to Sloane, and Sloane's taking a shower because you can't have a space movie without someone taking a shower and then just hanging out with them while they're in the shower, I guess. I don't know. But Sloane's taking a shower, and she likes to take a cold shower because why wouldn't she? She's an ice lady. And she gets out of the shower, and Ada's there, and like this woman is now stuck like looking at the woman. It was awkward. It wasn't really intentional because Sloane makes the point of like saying, oh, she forgets that Ada isn't military, so this would be weird for Ada, but it's not weird for Sloane. And I think that's really the purpose of this chapter, is to show that Sloane is so pragmatic and so military that things that would make us uncomfortable don't make her uncomfortable, and also to kind of show a contrast of what she is like versus what Ada's like, which especially makes more sense if you just know going forward that Ada is going to be a more important character. But really, it was just kind of like, this is a chapter. This is a chapter, and it's in the book. Oh, this was a thing I thought was interesting too. Sloane is getting dressed, and she notices that the humidity on the planet is actually really good for her hair, and that she likes how her hair looks. And Wendig makes a point of saying that Sloane doesn't often consider her look. She's just not the type of person who would, but every now and again it's like nice to be reminded that she can look good, which is a very realistic thing. And it's something that actually reminded me a lot of Most Wanted by Ray Carson, with the character of Kira in that novel. It's a lead into Solo, Star Wars story, if you're not familiar. But what I appreciate about this is so often with female characters, people want to not write the stereotypical chick that's like super into the dresses and stuff, and so they go all the way in another direction, right? So then it becomes, well, if she's not prissy, then she must not care about anything. She doesn't care how she looks, she doesn't care what she's wearing, she doesn't care about any of it. When in reality, a lot of women who are like that just don't care about it most of the time. But that doesn't mean they don't care about it none of the time. That might not have been English. I think you know what I'm trying to say, though. But I appreciated how Kira in that novel is so pragmatic, but also appreciates like nice clothing because she's never had nice clothing, and it's an important character detail. And that's the two really aren't connected, other than I appreciate that nuance when I see it. Oh my gosh, okay, 20 Rebels Strike. Oh, this is from the perspective of the Rebel Strike team, in which we meet the character of Jom. Jom is a character we're going to see a lot more of soon. He's kind of a late addition main character to the novel. What I really liked here is Jom is describing other battles he's been in, and he talks about how he once chased the rebels off of, or no, he is a rebel. Jom talks about how he once chased the Imperials off of Geonosis when they were trying to start up another droid factory there. I immediately thought of the story arc in Rebels with Saw Gerrera, where things are happening on Geonosis. I don't think the two are connected, because I'm pretty sure it was only the Ghost crew that was there at the time. Though maybe I'm misremembering, it's been a little while since I've watched that particular arc. It did kind of make me wonder just how often did we go back to Geonosis. 21 is Nora sitting on her sister's rooftop, and she's trying, she's once again contemplating life, because this is like the number one thing Nora does is contemplate life. I mean, if Nora was a dude, she'd fit right in the X-Wing novels, where you just sit in a ship and think about life in italics for 3 pages. But instead it's Nora, and so she just sits on rooftops and contemplates the couple sitting across on another roof. I just really like the image, and I'm sure this was very intentional, but she just describes them as this like very peaceful couple that's just like enjoying life together, and then a TIE fighter flies overhead and the guy pulls out like a little blaster and just starts shooting the TIE fighter. But where the scene goes from there is Nora goes to talk to Timon, who's fixing Bones, and it's really funny. Bones gets like an astromech droid arm, like he's busted up, he needs a new arm, and the only spare part they have at the house is an astromech leg. So now he's like this battle droid, but he also has like, and it's just amusing. But you see how close Timon is to this droid, and like Nora sees them, and then Timon's all embarrassed, and it was just like, it was this very human, very small scale story that's being set in this larger story, which is very much what the relationship between Nora and Timon is. In some ways, I really like their story because of that, because it's nice to see that because it's nice to see that juxtaposition. But in some ways, I'm also really annoyed by it because I want to get to the big story. You know, it's just kind of the give and take there. Eventually, Nora talks to one of, it's either, I can't remember the name, I think it's her sister, not her, like, sister's wife. But she talks to one of the aunts, and finds out that Bones was, like, literally Timon's protector when he didn't have parents anymore. Then the most interesting thing happens. We see Singer and Jazz talking, and I think this is where I know we have it here, I don't think it's happened sooner. We find out that Jazz is the niece of the character Sugi, who was a bounty hunter in Star Wars The Clone Wars. So it's kind of cool to see that connection, and that connection keeps coming back. But more importantly, Jazz and Singer are talking, and Singer says that he used to be an Imperial loyalty officer to Jazz, and Jazz already knows this, but Nora doesn't, and Nora overhears them, and then she like straight attacks Singer. And that is kind of where you see there was this very tedious alliance between all these characters, and Singer had to lie and say that he was a rebel so that Nora would trust him, and now Nora has figured out that he's lied. And so now you have this even more tedious alliance where they're not really sure what they're doing. And then finally, we're on Interlude 8, and that's on Syracuse. Not saying that right at all, but it's a planet, and the planet is run by Zagurian slavers, also not saying that right. And if I'm not mistaken, the Zagurian slavers are also from Star Wars The Clone Wars, so we're getting a lot of connections in here. But basically, there are three dudes who were slaves, a Weequay, a Quarren, and a Wookiee. Rebels and the Imperials are fighting, even though, like, the slavers aren't Imperial, but they're backed by the Imperials, and they know that, the slaves basically a slave revolt happens, because they know that if the Empire wins, they're toast, so they want the rebels to win. What's really cool is at the end of the interlude, the slaves are freed, and they're asking the folk from the rebellion, what do we do now? And there's this rebel soldier who's just kind of walking around, you know, shell-shocked almost, and she just kind of looks at them and goes, we don't know, and nobody knows. The line, no one knows what happens next, comes in. And that's another kind of running theme in this book, is you can have a war and you can defeat the bad guys, but then what do you do? I mean, especially in Star Wars, I think that's a very true point where you have these wars, the characters are fighting, but they never ask what happens after. And that's just kind of like the way narrative works, right? You know, we watched the end of Return of the Jedi and we knew the good guys won, but then what happens? You know, what happens is you end the movie so you don't have to deal with what happens next. You know, we're reading a book called Aftermath, and this is all about the aftermath of what happens when the war's over. And so this was just another really cool way of looking at it. You know, where we'd seen in a past interlude about a planet that was suffering because the rebels kicked the Imperials out, and then they were worse off. This is a case of, here's some people who are better off because the rebels kicked the Imperials out, and that it's not always going to go the same way. You're going to have different results on different planets, and that's why no one really knows what's going on. And that's my thoughts. So I thought the page numbers for this week would be fine. Like, it was a reasonable number of pages, but we talked about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and that's just getting kind of long for these videos, and it forces me to rush a little bit more than I wanted to. So I'm gonna start slowing things down, not necessarily in terms of page count, but just making sure I'm not talking about too many things all in a go. But for the next thing, there's chapter 22, chapter 23, and then 24 is just a couple of pages. And 3 chapters is easier to talk about than 5. So let's read 22 through 24. That's going to be about 20 pages in paperback edition. And that's what we'll talk about next week, and maybe just keeping it to 3 things will be easier. We'll be starting out part 3, which is really the end game of the book. There's technically a part 4 to the book, I will tell you, but part 4 is literally like an epilogue. So we're really looking at like the final act of the book here. And I also kind of want to slow down because I want to be able to finally talk about some of these themes that keep coming up now that they're going to kind of come into fruition. That's where we're at. I hope to hear from you guys on this video. Please leave a comment. Hope to continue talking to you guys next week as well. If you're not already, please follow us at Port Haven Forums on Twitter and visit port-haven.com for even more. I will see you next week.